Hi, everybody, and welcome to the November 16th, 2023 edition of the KubeStellar Community Meeting. This is post-KubeCon North America for those looking for some context. Thank you all for joining. I'll go ahead and share my screen now. All right. So we're in the section for 11/16/2023. I'll go ahead and read out our contributor code of conduct. As contributors and maintainers in the CNCF community and in interest of fostering an open and welcoming community, we pledge to respect all people who contribute to reporting issues, posting feature requests, updating documentation, submitting pull requests or patches, and other activities. We are committed to making participation in the CNCF community a harassment-free experience for everyone, regardless of level of experience, gender identity and expression, sexual orientation, disability, personal appearance, body size, race, ethnicity, age, religion, or nationality. Basically, everyone, that says just be nice to each other. You've joined a call that's being recorded and will be published to YouTube for our community channel. If you wish not to be recorded, either visually or audibly, please drop the call or mute your microphone or turn off your video. For those of you watching and would like to contribute back to this agenda, please go to kubestellar.io/join us to either underscore us or just join us without the underscore. And when you do that, you'll be in a Google group. Click to join, and then you'll be given access shortly thereafter to this document and all the rest of our artifacts, as well as get regular bi-weekly meeting invites. I've copied the agenda to the top for the next meeting. Please do not touch this one right here. We are working in the 11/16/2023, 10 a.m. in progress meeting section. All right, so folks, if you are attending and would like to record such attendance, please go ahead and add your name to the list above. Let's get things kicked off. So first on the agenda, we have decoupling of KCP. This effort's been underway for some time now. Ezra's joined us on the call today. Ezra, can you give us an update as to where we are?
Thank you, Andy. So just the recap of what is the purpose here. So the purpose here is to have KubeStellar working without KCP or not coupled to KCP, be able to work with other space provider. And the decoupling is in two dimensions. First, be able to run without bringing up the KCP server at all, right? And we will use other space providers that I will point out later. The other one, what we call, this is the runtime decoupling, and the other one is what we call the code decoupling. If we are now not hard-coded decoupled within the code to KCP, we no longer need any dependency on KCP within our code and libraries. For example, we want and need to switch from using the KCP code generators to use the regular vanilla Kubernetes code generators and inputs. So that's the high-level plan. Specifically, what we are doing is there are two main areas where we need to address when we want to decouple KCP from within the KubeStellar project. One is the whole usage of workspaces, right? Workspaces are the heart of our architecture in KubeStellar. And basically what we've done, we introduced a new abstraction, a new framework, which we call space management, space provider, or namely the space framework. And we defined a space as a thing that exposes a Kubernetes API. It comes also with the backend storage of Kubernetes like etcd. So basically, you can treat that as if it's a cluster. As an example, KCP workspace is a space. A Kubernetes cluster is a space, and so on. So we developed such an abstraction layer. So we are changing all the code in KubeStellar. Instead of interact directly with KCP workspaces, it will interact, it will fetch from the space framework library, it will fetch the kubeconfig and the access information to access a space, and then access that space in the regular Kubernetes way through client set with kubeconfig and all of that. That means that the code, as I said before, we do not need anymore to use this special KCP cluster aware client go function and all of that. We are using regular vanilla Kubernetes code because we are addressing a specific config. In the near future, we are supporting three, and maybe in the next community call or the one after that, I will give a detailed review on the space framework and all of that. At this point, I will just say that we are supporting three space providers. One is Kind, so you can use Kind clusters as your space. We support KubeFlex, and we support KCP. So you can still use the KCP workspaces, but it's not embedded in our KubeStellar code anymore. It's just going through the space framework. So I cover the spaces. The other element is the bind and export. We're using heavily the feature of KCP bind and export. And when we move out from using KCP directly in our code, we switch to to use KubeBind, which is an open source project that basically is doing the same. We have the concept of consumer and producer of API services, and we are just using that in our code. So all that is going on. And so that was the background, and the status is simply that we are working towards a delivery date towards end of November. We will have our initial working version of KubeStellar, where it can actually work without KCP, it can work with KubeFlex, for example, and all the tests, the quick start user test and the example one test should work, and users can use the Helm chart and the image, and that will already include the space framework component, the space manager, and all of that. So that was a short update. Andy, anything else you want to ask or I should add?
No, I think that about does it. So we're talking through timeframes and what have you. I think you've got the vast majority of work underway. And so I think, we've found some gotchas and what have you, but they're being factored in and worked on as well. I think you've got a good majority of the work. Sounds like it should be coming to a close at the end of the month in terms of KubeBind and space framework. And then we carry on into December with, I guess, lots and lots of testing, and to determine whether that will be, when it will be ready for us to introduce to our clients at large. Is there anything you'd like to add to that sort of pseudo estimation?
No, I think you got it right. I think we are expecting around, a month, between months or two, that will include both detailed, very extensive tests, but also some few improvements that we still want to add on top of the working, version and so on. So yeah, we are facing some phase of testing of that solution.
Yeah, one thing that's neat that I wanted to point out for our viewers at home is the CI testing that we have in place has really become key to the transition here that we're working on, especially the executable, like the user quick start for Kind that we have, and that, so the way that we're guaranteeing and assuring our customers that our interfaces don't change is by holding true to making sure that these documents work end to end with the replacement and displacement of decoupling of KCP and transitioning to a more generic space framework. So I think that's a real benefit for everybody out there, our customers that are using our existing solution and will come along on the ride to transition to the more generic space framework.
Yeah, I want to add to that. That's very important, Andrew. Thank you. We are, and you're correct. And to take advantage of that nice mechanism, when we add more space provider, we are actually extending those documents to include the same test, but for different space providers. So you will be able, we will have a document describing the flow of using KubeFlex as a space provider, and that will be embedded into our CI/CD and keep kind of running on our PRs and all of that.
Yeah, that's a really excellent point. So what's cool about this is our customers will actually have a choice of which logical cluster provider they would like to use under the covers, which can give them options in terms of whether they'd like there to be something that's able to accomplish greater scale than what we currently allow for today, or maybe it's more resiliency. So they'll be able to use different aspects of, let's say, like I mean, dare I go into this space, but like cap theorem to understand what are the benefits and drawbacks of using a specific logical cluster provider for the sake of accomplishing a goal that they have for using KubeStellar. So I think it's great, and thank you so much for your commitment and your contributions to the source code base. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Andy.
Okay, all right, let's move on to KubeCon. June, do you want to give us an update?
Yeah, I think Ezra already covered the majority of this thing. What I can add is kind of somewhat details about the progress we are making. Because we are moving away from KCP, we are losing the cross-cluster view, which is offered by KCP's API export. That's one thing. Another thing is because we are introducing KubeBind, we are actually making copies of object between the consumer and providers. This is the second thing. Because of these two things, it makes a little bit harder comparing than before for us to track the objects across the clusters. The team worked together, and especially with the help from Mike, we were able to come up with a solution of that. And we are working together towards the last mile to integrate KubeBind into KubeStellar.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for June or Ezra? Excellent. All right. Next up on the agenda, thank you, June and Ezra, Franco and Kevin, to talk more about resiliency of connectivity between KubeStellar Core and KubeStellar Syncer. Take it away, fellas. What do we got?
Get started on this perhaps. This is an issue that we are aware where when the current space provider KCP is restarted, it changes the token of the user in the Kubernetes user, and therefore it invalidates the kube configs that are used to access that space. So we are investigating a couple of solutions. One is replacing KCP with KubeFlex. That solution does not seem to suffer of the same issue, but this solution will be available only after the space management and the move to away from KCP is completed. Another approach is to revisit the KCP Helm chart and having that working properly in an OpenShift environment. We're still having some issues with the TLS not working properly between the ingress and the service. The issue has been reported on the KCP Slack channel. I'm still working on it. Basically, I don't have a clear solution. What I'm planning to do is test different version of the Helm chart and make sure that I didn't have any mistake on my part in the deployment. So it's a two-pronged approach, right? The long term seems to be it's already solved, but it's not in place yet. And in the short term, we are revisiting the KCP Helm chart.
All right.
Yeah, I want to say Franco is doing the heavy lifting on this right now. And if it's not clear why this is important, we are working with devices which are in an edge space with variable connectivity. So if an edge device disconnects from the core and then comes back, but the core has restarted right now, it won't be able to communicate anymore. And so we want this resiliency. So there's a way for an edge cluster to identify itself to the core, even if it's restarted.
Okay, Kevin. Mike, you have a question?
Or just a couple comments. Right, it's nothing to do with the intermittent connectivity. The problem is when the core restarts, regardless of whether the edge things are connected or not at the time. And I think the second prong that Franco was talking about is the underlying idea is that later releases of KCP don't have this problem. Or I'm not quite sure I understand.
I think he's saying that, and I'm speaking for Kevin, and he should, not Kevin, for Franco, but I think he's saying that it possibly doesn't work in the most recent versions of it either. Is that what I heard?
I think the bottom line, it's not totally clear if the KCP deployed with their original Helm chart and the cert manager suffers of the same Kubernetes user token issue. That was not clearly stated either way. So it would have sounded simple to basically deploy it and verify that by restarting the pod, it survives the kubeconfig, but I didn't get to the point of deployment yet.
Okay, so Franco, my understanding is the problem is it's a particular user, and there's exactly one user whose token is replaced every time the server starts. And that's the behavior of the server, whether it's in a Helm chart or not. So I don't think switching to the other Helm chart, any Helm chart, is going to solve the problem. I think the way to solve the problem is to stop using that user, switch to using a different user whose credentials are not regenerated every time the server starts.
I don't necessarily disagree with you. I was hoping that when they do a deployment for the Helm chart, they have some parameters in the KCP binary to implement a new user that persists. That's not guaranteed. I was hoping for it. Unfortunately, I am not able, I'm not capable of bringing up a new user for Kubernetes and using that and passing that to KCP. So that's something I cannot do by myself.
So again, the issue is the user named, what was it, KCP admin, and that is fixed server behavior. There's no command line parameters that change it.
Okay, so then there's no need to fight the Helm chart, I guess.
I think it would be great to get the latest Helm chart working. I'm all for that, but it won't solve this particular problem.
Can somebody point me to the right guidance of what it means to replace that user? How to deal with that?
I think we have an issue, and I've made comments on it. If you have trouble finding them, contact me offline.
Okay. Any more questions or comments for either Kevin or Franco? All right. Thank you for the update. Okay. Update on one-to-one status. I don't think anybody's gotten around to this yet, but we did get information with regard to Argo CD's next turn of the crank with KubeStellar. Thank you, June, for supplying that. I was not able to meet the folks at KubeCon North America, but I will be looking to lurk on their community call to attend next community CD, and to see if I can update them on where we are with KubeStellar and how we might work together in the future. Okay, any updates on the Flux CD? We're going to be meeting with them soon, correct, June?
Yeah, we'll meet with them next Tuesday.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
I also asked the person to contact me to also
Good.
update the agenda with you.
Yes, I've been included, I think.
Okay, cool.
All right, thank you. All right, a little update on KubeCon. So let's see if I can do this real quick. KubeCon was big. Let's see. Just trying to get to my sharing. 9,000 people in attendance and 5,000, I think, online. So the show floor, one of the first things that caught my eye was Podman desktop from Red Hat. So this might be a good, maybe something else we can use as an alternative to Docker desktop. I'm not sure, but we can look into it. This was the lightning talks that were given at the booth. You can see we were prominently highlighted there. I did give the talk at the booth. I was shocked though, because I showed up, I lugged 2 Lego sets that I had bought back in March for this specific event. I lugged them on the plane, brought them with me in my luggage, brought them to my room, brought them back out of my room, took them into a ride share, brought them to the show floor, opened the booth, and they said, "Oh yeah, we can put them back in our storage space." The storage space, 70 Lego sets. I'm talking everything from the Death Star to big TIE fighters and X-Wings. I felt really small at that point. I said, why didn't anybody tell me that this was going to be here? But either way, they did auction off. They did have a pretty cool raffle that took place where they got rid of where they were able to give away Lego sets to others. The booth was very well attended. The talk was very well attended. I probably had 20 or plus people listening to what I had to say about KubeStellar. I thought this was pretty cool. I mean, just as an aside, these screens really fascinate me. The use of the technology to bring light in front of people, but yet you can see through the screen itself. I thought that was really cool. Anyway, so big arcade-like presence at the show. Everything was on display from old Nintendos to Pac-Man and other things. Some of our friends from Upbound Crossplane, shout out to Paolo. I thought he might like seeing that they were there. A couple of other vendors that I visited with and talked with. I had a lot of discussions. I went to quite a few sessions, one in which was hosted by a lady from Google, and of course our friend Stefan from Upbound from the SIG API machinery. And there I learned about this enhancement that's going on, a little bit more about how it fits into their overall strategy. Mike Spreitzer, member of our community here, has been instrumental in moving this ahead with Stefan. And Mike, would you like to say a few words about what this specific KEP is going to be used for in the future, or what it allows others to use it?
Yeah, I've actually done no more than a little cheerleading. The work is Stefan's, but the idea is there's already in Kubernetes a library for constructing API servers, but it's just a relatively small fragment of the regular Kube API server. The Kube API server adds to the standard library a couple of things, both of which get called geez, I'm just blanking on the term, but anyway, it's one is the ability to delegate requests to another server, and the other is to have resources defined by custom resource definition objects. That's not in the so-called API server package, or I'm not sure, a repo. So the generic control plane is building an intermediate level repo that builds on API server and adds those two things. And it gets closer to what's in Kube API server, so that others building who want to build API servers have this is a higher level common base to start from. So the idea is, one of the things that we like about KCP is it doesn't have a bunch of stuff built in, right? So if you want to build, if anybody wants to build a server that doesn't have a bunch of stuff built in, they can do that with much less work now building on this
Right.
higher level thing. Or if they want to build in their own stuff instead of what's built into Kube API Server, again, they have a higher level base to build on.
Yeah, really cool. I want to ask Paolo off the cuff is how does this influence what you've been doing in terms of the work on KubeFlex? Does this help hinder you? Does this create more competition for you potentially in the future? How do you view this?
No, actually, this will be probably giving more options to KubeFlex, because instead of using maybe the full API server, with this we could even have running instances of builds of this more maybe lightweight API servers built with a library, where we only have what we need for our particular purpose. I guess the main goal is to build this sort of for purpose API server where you actually have only the components, the APIs that you need.
All right. Yeah, it's really cool. I'm glad to see that people are leveling up like this. And this is one instance of there were several of these types of things that I saw going on, but just to give you an idea, in a few of the keynotes, it was actually explicitly stated, that people want to get away from managing and maintaining the day-to-day upkeep of a Kubernetes cluster and want to move more into, abstractions where they can actually move away from and actually depend upon the fact that a kube cluster will exist, not just the kube cluster. So it gets back to the point, once you start building on top of things and making these higher level abstractions, it starts to speak volumes about what types of reliability and guarantees you might have for the existence of a cluster. In this case, you could have built for purpose clusters that can come and go because they're so lightweight. And so this is really cool to see this motivation, this movement taking place in a lot of the SIGs. They're all kind of aligned on this same purpose. And I think eventually what this gets us to is more treating our clusters as cattle and less like, pets. So that's pretty cool. Thanks for the update there, Mike. All right. Some cool technology just to highlight. I did find, other than KubeStellar, of course, I found a company called Ambassador. I think this might have been around for a bit, but just it's new to me. Something called telepresence. It allows you, if you get a chance to take a look at their site, it allows you to instantly hook in a new version of a service into an existing production environment where you're running an existing version of that service, a production version of that service, and it uses it's a trick on kubectl port forwarding that is allowed by default. So really cool stuff, and looking forward to seeing more from them in the future. And this, just to give you an idea, this was, post COVID. This is high time, middle of the day. This is the show floor. This is was only one section of the floor. Plenty of activity, lots of people exchanging ideas and thoughts. Surprisingly, nobody with any symptoms of COVID just yet. I'm sure, I was just really shocked at how much information was exchanged at this show. So it was really cool to see. So that'll about do it for that. Let me get back to the agenda here. All right. So I did do a lightning talk, as I mentioned. I gave away stickers for KubeStellar, and I've got a whole bunch of information that I've accumulated in the format of a PowerPoint. And the PowerPoint I'll be going through in the coming weeks. I'll drop little things here and there inside these meetings to just inform others of how that went and what we're following up on. One remark that I would give, or one phrase that I heard is no is temporary, yes is forever. This was a comment that was mentioned at one of the keynotes that I thought was really interesting, because in open source it means something when you commit to giving somebody a feature or bringing about new functionality for your project. When you say yes to somebody and you commit to that, you then are committing to supporting it for the duration of your project, unless you go through the arduous task of sunsetting it in some way, shape, or form. And no is temporary. So the word no doesn't really have to mean, you're never going to do it. No just means it's not for now. So something to keep in mind when you think you're alleviating anxiety in a community by saying yes, you might actually be creating it in longer term technical debt. Whereas saying no is initially thought as abrasive and maybe abrupt, but eventually when use cases arise, it may be useful to move in that excuse me, move in that direction. So really what I took away from that 6-word sentence, if you will, is that, or 6-word phrase, is that it's really just a function of time. And if you give yourself time, you can alleviate anxiety, or if you give yourself too little time, you might increase the anxiety or technical debt in the future. I did give opening remarks in the Edge Native in the IoT WG Edge gathering that took place. It was a small gathering, it was only 4 or 5 people involved. But what was nice about it is the exchange of ideas was fluid, and they were people that are very passionate about the space. So now that we've got an actual white paper that's been published, we now can submit that as an RFP to EU, which is coming up in Paris in the spring. We have submitted one talk on behalf of the community. The current proposal right now, it's entitled as a KubeStellar introduction, and it has an abstract to the same effect. Based upon what I learned about how the sessions are not only entitled, but their abstracts and their content, is that it's a little bit more holistic and geared towards solving problems and giving solutions in spaces where there are real high-level needs. And so I've been rethinking how we might change the title and the abstract and the content to be better fit and maybe better geared towards what the selection criteria and the committee are looking for, and maybe give us a better chance at being selected in the future. I'll be reviewing that with Paulo in the coming week, and hopefully by Thanksgiving, or by at least the next community meeting, I should have a new proposal out there. And also, there's the addition in EU. There will be the addition of poster sessions for presentation, and this will include research efforts underway. So I've asked June and Braulio, who I know do a lot of research in the area of distributed configuration, both for things like GPUs and their use in a fractional sense as part of clusters, participation in inferencing, and AI data preprocessing. It may be useful to bring that work that he's been working on, maybe bring that in front of the folks in Paris, as well as the work that Braulio's been doing with the folks at Cornell on a studies arrangement that we have with them that may be fruitful here, either with Rendezvous or maybe the software-defined farm. Might be an interesting topic to bring to Paris. So in addition to the one talk that we're submitting with KubeStellar and the use of the multi-cloud and its use in the multi-cloud computer, along with MCAD, there may be another talk that we could get out of the WG IoT Edge, and then maybe 2 additional talks for the poster sessions, as well as booth presence at the KubeCon EU event. All right, so that about sums up KubeCon and our involvement. Anybody, any questions for me, or any thoughts or comments in general about the direction, or where we might, what other suggestions you might have? All right, Yana, you were at the show. What did you think of the show this year? Had you ever been to a KubeCon before?
Oh, this is first time.
What was your general feeling and thoughts about the show? Did you find it useful? Was it big? Was it overwhelming? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it was overwhelming. And also, I attended the contributor summit and presented my recent works in the working group or policy working groups, and Kubernetes developers and attended in the working groups, and yeah, I could exchange my idea with him.
Is anybody still there? I hear nothing.
Yep. I was just typing. Sorry, Mike. All right. Anybody with any other comments or questions for KubeCon? All right. It was great to see you there, Jan. Well, it was great to see you before the show. I didn't see you during the show. It's a lot of ground to cover, a lot of places to go. All right. Next up, 1064 and 909. Mike, anything you want to give us in terms of an update on either one of these? Oh, this is closed. Okay. So we can take, oh, right. This is custom resource divisions. Right. Okay. We just closed this. Okay. Let me go back. All right. So this is closed. Good. And then 909.
Right. There's a PR for that we're holding off to do the focus on the KCP decoupling.
Right. Right. Okay. Right. So this is now slated for 7. Cool. Okay. PR is open. Sprint 7 in December. Okay, thank you. All right, Mike, anything you want to talk about? And I know this was a topic near and dear to you, or for versioning. Anything new you want to bring up here?
Well, we haven't had any real discussion or progress. I'll just
Yeah.
refer people to, we did, I think, maybe since the last community meeting, merge a update to the website, adding a page documenting the packaging and versioning. We've actually got a rather complicated setup now that makes a lot of things difficult, and I encourage people to study that and appreciate the difficulties we're in.
Okay. Mike, could you put in the document that you have, that you gave us a link to?
Sure, I'll do that offline.
Thank you. Document. Okay. All right, good. Paulo, I've seen some activity on KubeFlex recently. Anything you want to comment on for the community's benefit? Oh, did Paulo jumped off? Okay, don't have Paulo. All right, let's move on.
No, I still
Oh.
hearing this. Sorry.
Oh, there he is. Okay, I missed
yeah.
you. Sorry.
No, these are kind of minor updates that we did mainly to support the work Ezra has been doing on the space framework. There is no major update. The last update really was about supporting running KubeFlex in OpenShift, and then there were a few minor updates. For example, the sort of the separation of in the secret where we provide a kubeconfig for each individual space or control plane, the ability to use to basically 2 keys, one for internal cluster access in cluster, and one for external access. That was pretty much the last update. And then I think there were minor fixes for few minor bugs that we found basically running KubeFlex. I think it's pretty stable now. I haven't really seen any major issues so far.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right. Braulio, can you give us an update on performance and stress testing here? Anything that you've been able to do recently? Do you have the issue number handy? I could drop it in here.
Yeah, I'll send you the issue. So so I have set up on using close loader to generate the transport experiment, and to measure the latency between the steps. So I have after doing a good survey in tools available on open source. So I haven't found any tools that's suitable for the tasks that I want to complete. So I have decided to write just only in-house controllers to complete the steps. So now I'm just on process of implementing this controller and experimenting with the KubeStellar loader.
Okay. Viable options. Have chosen to roll our own. So one of the things you might be interested in potential to submit to create a package that might be useful for others. So potentially, since we're working in the open source here, the potential for you, if you find something that you can create that's generic enough and maybe has some applicability for others, the potential is there for you to create something that can be used by others and therefore hosted by us. So consider that as a possibility.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, if you could just fill in the issue number there, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay, update on KubeStellar kubectl plugins. Nick, we want to give us an update as to where you are. It's been a few weeks, and I think you've made some good progress.
So there's a PR now, 1294, and that implements a number of commands. So ensure location, ensure WDS, remove location and WDS, and then get internal and external kubeconfig. So these are converting bash scripts over into Go. However, this PR is mainly for awareness and gathering some feedback. We're going to wait until the KCP decoupling work gets merged in, and then most of these scripts will have to get reworked to take into account the changes with the KCP decoupling.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So, and in the meantime, are you working on any, I think this satisfies what, 6 out of the 9, I think, total that were targeted? Are you going to continue to work on any of those other 3 that remain?
Yeah, so now I'll start working on the
cluster prep for Syncer. Yeah.
On the prep for Syncer would be the next one up.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I think I had mentioned this earlier, but I just wanted to bring it up. One of the things that I've been kind of like trying to figure out like how we might make it easier for customers to use our project is the thought around how to create an edge placement object. And I've been thinking about like things like kubectl apply in its dry run format and Helm in its dry run format, and the potential to possibly create an edge placement from the output or what I assume to be the output from those commands. And potentially maybe that's a kubectl, kubestellar something. Maybe that's a command in the future, but I'm just planting a seed. I don't know it for sure. Maybe there's a potential there. Don't know just yet. Just thought I'd trade that comment with you. All right. Okay. Does anybody else have anything? Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, right. So there's another thing that Paulo has pointed out, and we could do it today in release 0.14 if it weren't for a bug that I have a fix for that we're not merging because we're in a code freeze, which is that the idea of identifying a workload by a label selector on the objects. That works nicely with Argo CD and with Helm. Both can apply a label to everything that they deploy. So that's another simple way to identify things deployed that way.
Yeah, I think for Argo CD, that'd be really good, and Flux CD as well. For anybody who's got, an automated CI/CD solution. For other people that want to use just simple command lines, I mean, there's also the possibility of annotation. And I think we're looking at a bunch of different user interaction points, I'll put it, there's the potential for different ways to arrive at the same output, which is to have an active and useful edge placement object that will encompass and pull the correct resource definitions through to the correct location. So I think, yeah, there's a couple of different ways that we can address it. And so I'm putting together some thoughts in my mind as to how that might work after all the experience that I've got with the multi-cloud computer. And I'd like to bring that forward to review with Paulo at the beginning of December. And then we'll start to talk about it and circulate it within the team probably towards the end of December, mid-December, I should say. Which bug is that, Mike? Which one is causing the problem? Because we used to have that ability to do that label namespaces. What's causing?
Right. The point here is to look to a label selector on the workload objects, not on the namespace.
Right.
So let me see if I can quickly navigate to that. So the issue number is 1296,
Oh, that's 1296?
That's
Okay.
1296, and the fix is in 1297, PR 1297.
Oh, that's 1296. Is that the one that's in no sprint? Ah, okay. 1296, 1297. Cool.
Sorry, I maybe forgot to put that in a sprint.
No. That's okay. Yeah, no, that's not, you don't have to worry about it. I got it. So let me put that in MCC.
And it's just the stupidest little bug. The intent was that it should be optional. I just forgot to write the two things that make it actually optional.
Okay. Very good. Yeah, I put that in sprint 6, but I'll have to go back and I'll put it back in sprint 7. 1296, 1297. Okay, yes, and thank you for reminding me. Yeah, we've called a code freeze until the end of December. I'm sorry, not until the end of December, end of November. December 1st, we'll release the code freeze. That's so we can give ourselves ample time and breathing room to work on the things that we need to do for KCP decoupling. So I think that'll work out. Anybody with any other questions or items they'd like to add to the agenda at this time? Okay. All right, so we've got about 10 minutes left. Let's go through a bit of issue triage here. I'll just start off with admitting I've got a couple of things that I owe answers to in relation to things like 1080, 1066, 1138, a bunch of CNCF based community items like 503, which can now be closed. 283, we're waiting for the outcome of with the CNCF sandbox voting and election. Voting election for CNCF sandbox inclusion for the next tag runtime discussion will take place on December 12th. And so we look forward to be put forth there as a potential sandbox member. And hopefully we'll know by end of December if we've achieved that goal or not. We have upcoming meetings that are happening, one at the end of this month on the 30th, which is a Thursday. It is not during Thanksgiving, so we can continue with that. Thanksgiving falls on an interesting date this year because it's not really the last week of the month, so it's cool. So we'll squeak in a couple more meetings before the end of the year. I do think the one at the end of December, though, will forego. The next one is in mid-December after the November 30th, and then I think we can call it quits for the end of the year, but we'll talk about that more in the next meeting. Okay, so let's see, who do we have on the call here? So let's talk a bit more. I think June, we've already talked through. Braulio, is there anything you want to talk about with respect to the work you've been doing on the multi-cloud computer and MCAD? Is there any news there you can share with how things are progressing with MCAD?
Yeah, so for the MCAD, so we have finished the first implementation integrating with the KubeStellar, and we have now version working stable on the stack. And we will have starting the work of moving MCAD to run in the other namespace but Cube system. So the MCAD now, is the controllers are not able to run in a different namespace, but now we have just an issue of the API service that the agent expose. They when they move to a different namespace, the API services are not working properly. And we have today we have a working section with Mike later this afternoon. He's going to help us to debug this issue. And we also have starting discussion next plan also how to improve MCAD to use the other tools to collect the telemetry of metrics in the clusters versus using today how we're doing the MCAD agent per se. So in the next few weeks we should have some design proposal.
Okay. Thank you, Braulio. Okay. Let's see. Anything else you want to comment on in the area of MCC, or is I think that's about sums it up, right?
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right, and also on a side note for MCC, Francois been working on, a new member of our community has been working on some validation testing. Can you both tell us a little bit more about what you're doing there?
We're trying to come up with an end-to-end testing for the entire MCC stack. And what we have settled there is for a testing approach based on declarative rather than imperative. We've been looking around tools that exist in that area. So one candidate was Cuddle. However, this project seems to be not really active since a couple of months. In the meantime, Taverno Censo came out in October, and they reused a flavor of Cuddle that they enhanced for the purpose, and they open source this as a project now. So we are betting on this one, and we are engaging with it. We tried it out; seems to be promising. So we'll use it to validate components configuration and components status. Just Andy created a list yesterday. I think we have like 320 resources in this stack to test, or at least, so that's what we're after.
Excellent. Thank you, Francois. Okay, so yeah, so the multi-cloud computer and KubeStellar's, what KubeStellar does for it is the ability to move workloads from one cluster to another based upon their abilities, capability, and resource availability. So things like, let's say, jobs that are doing AI inferencing or AI data preprocessing, the ability to move a job that, let's say it performs better or is geared towards working on a GPU, or what people are deeming as XPUs at this point. That's the term that I heard thrown around at KubeCon. So these built for purpose processing units, you may have heard, I think IBM has one that they're working on. Microsoft has one that I just saw on Reddit last night, specific for AI. There's GPUs that have existed in the market. NVIDIA, for the most part, has that market cornered. And then there's traditional CPUs. And so you can imagine a state where there'll be more and more of these types of things being introduced into the market to take some of that market share away, and also to do specific processing for specific tasks, which is interesting, right? The world of fabrication of these chips has become I guess, somewhat easier to accomplish, and therefore it's opening a new market for people to be able to enter and compete in. So that's pretty cool. So the idea of the multi-cloud computer is to be able to take input from something like Open Data Hub or Kubeflow pipelines, and these are jobs that a data scientist might be working on in Python. Perhaps it's a notebook, and then to use Ray under the covers or PyTorch to then take and dispatch those jobs across MCAD. MCAD would pick up the job and say, "Oh, I can schedule you based upon the availability of resources or your requirement for resource to the following item in the set of locations, a set of clusters that was given to me by an upstream input." Basically the job parameters at that point, right? So the job says these are the clusters that I could run on because they have the availability of a GPU or CPU, and then MCAD takes it one step further and says, well, let's assign you directly to one of those clusters. And then when the job is assigned to a cluster, then that's when a placement decision is made, the placement record is updated for KubeStellar, and then the job is distributed to that cluster for execution. Status, logs, metrics are retrieved, sent back upstream for others to take that information and understand what the job execution entails, and if it's completed successfully or not, or if it's failed or needs to be restarted. So the idea of the multi-cloud computer is to abstract away the underlying mechanics of moving workloads around multiple clusters and give the ability for the user to basically define jobs as they would normally do for things like data preprocessing and inferencing without having to worry about the overhead of scheduling and placement of jobs and all on clusters. So it's pretty cool, the multi-cloud computer work, and we hope to maybe introduce that as part of our request for for papers for KubeCon in Paris. And so we'll see if we can find a way to craft a title of a presentation and give a good abstract that shows what some of our goals are and some of our non-goals in this space, and potentially be selected for presentation at KubeCon Paris, EU. Okay, folks, that about does it, I think, for our call today. Anybody with anything else they'd like to add at the end here before we close? Okay, great. All right, I'll post the meeting as soon as it becomes available to me. Thank you all for your time and attention. If you celebrate Thanksgiving, please have a happy and joyous one. Hope you gather with all your friends and family. And we'll see you at the end of November at our next call on November 30th. Thank you all.
Thank you.